everybody. You're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. We took a little bit of a break for Labor Day here in the States. I also understand there was a recent bank holiday, so other people in other English-speaking regions may have also been on a break, so we're very happy to be back with you. Did you have a good break, Steve?
I did. Didn't really do too much. I was going to start going through a lot of these, and I did start organizing some of them, but I just kind of reorganized them into other piles, which is not very helpful.
Yeah, I don't know how that happens when you get stuff.
At least now that I know which ones are where. Like this pile is all Flash, all of this entire pile. And I got two more boxes, two more short boxes. Somebody had them magically. My store had them.
That is so awesome. Yeah, we dealt with Ida a little bit, Hurricane Ida. Luckily, and I'm going to knock wood in my stupid head and anything you can here, just to be very lucky here. We're on the same power grid as a hospital and the police station. So we tend to get fixed first. So we actually never lost power, and we didn't have to deal with any kind of floodings. But it's the same situation as Sandy, with Hurricane Sandy. Like we were without power for 40 minutes. You went 2 miles down the road, and there were houses that were out for 15 days. We had the same situation here. We didn't have any contend with any water damage or anything along those lines. Yet 6 miles away was where one of the tornadoes touched down, and we just don't get tornadoes in New Jersey. So,
and actually,
I should say we used to not get tornadoes in New Jersey. So.
Must be some kind of warming or cooling effect out something. Yeah. Whatever.
No, but that doesn't exist, right? That's a fallacy. It's invented by the Chinese government, isn't it?
It's all a lie.
For something.
It's the magnetic poles switching. That's what it is. It's the magnetic pole switching, which, sure, if that happened, I guess we'd all just die. We might as well just give up now. So, okay.
And we actually had a trip planned, but because of Delta and a bunch of other factors, we decided to cancel it. Better safe than sorry. And, but still managed to fill in the days with interesting stuff to do while I was not at work for 6 days. Oh, it was beautiful.
That's amazing.
Should do that more often.
I can't wait to feel again.
Should do that more often. There isn't a single year I don't carry over like almost the entire year's worth of PTO. And just 1 year, I'd just like to take like a long break, like a 3-week break. I'd love to do that sometime. But
a true sabbatical.
I would love to be like an educator. Like, I'm sorry, I'm on sabbatical that semester.
I'm researching my new book.
Yeah.
Oh no, so in a couple of weeks I am going to be taking a week off. I have a wedding to attend up in New England, and then I'm taking the whole week after that wedding off. So, and I don't have anything planned. Nothing planned. I'm just going to come back home. Whatever we end up doing, we end up doing. My husband's going to be working a lot because Wicked is in town, and he's working the entire show for about a month and some change. So, I'm not going to pressure myself with anything. I'm not going to stress about anything. Maybe I'll be able to tackle some of this. Maybe not. It'd be nice if I did.
Well, you know me, son. I mean, we can just tell you. Put your arm up. Put your arm up there. Look at that. Look at the difference, people. This isn't just the lighting. He's got to get out in the sun more. With protection. With the appropriate protection, but,
Full muumuu and a giant straw hat. There we go.
I often think of a song by Divine Comedy when it comes to your skin tone. And it's, her clothes are blacker than the blackest cloth, and her skin is whiter than the snows of Hoth. And I just want to see you get some vitamin D. I think
everybody wants vitamin D.
Yeah. But you also have to understand, I was a lifeguard for many years. You can tell from the retired astronaut physique here. And I was very cognizant of how to treat yourself in the sun, I had friends who used to mix iodine in with their tanning lotion, so I've seen it all. Yeah. Used to mix iodine in.
The early days of the orange.
Yeah. I have a funny story about sun-in and my hair, but some snowy night in front of the fire. We'll do that another time. But we actually have an interview, and tech gods, please smile down upon us, because we have never done this before. Because of the Labor Day schedule, we actually had Steve do an interview, and that is with Chris. Jeez, I already forgot the pronunciation. Fildes. I got
Chris
it right.
Fildes.
Yeah, yes. Who is the writer of Fanny Galactic, Tuck to the Future, which is the latest installment in the Crime and Disorder series that he's writing. And yep, go ahead.
To correct that, it's Fanny Galactic is the name of the series.
Mm-hmm.
The latest book that he is kickstarting for Volume 2 is Crime and Disorder. So the first one was Tuck to the Future.
The Future. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And Crime and Disorder is the follow-up.
If I'd been at the interview, I'd have known that. Yeah.
We'll talk about that in the interview, and also I'll have the link up for the Kickstarter, which is in full blast right now.
Awesome.
It's about a week, just over a week in.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely check it out, because for those of you who have been watching our live shows for the past year and a half, almost a full year and a half. This was one of the books that I talked about several months ago, and I absolutely loved it. Mm-hmm. And hopefully other people will also pick this up, having heard it from that episode. But maybe you'll be more intrigued after the interview with Chris, I hope. But one thing I did want to mention in terms of other than technical possibilities of things going wrong, again, knock on wood, you'll notice something very interesting about my hair, because I have not had a haircut in a very long time, and I had this haircut after I did the interview. So I got this weirdo curly moppy mess that I just can't do anything with.
It's like a little bit of comic book bears magic.
Yes, it's like, whoa, my hair grew really long, and then it came right back.
And I guess there's a few stories to talk about in terms of comics news. So, and we do have some books. So it's still like a show. It's still like one of our regular shows. It's just technically going to be a little different than what we've done in the past.
Like a show.
Yeah. So in the 2 weeks since we've been together, have you gotten any cool stuff?
I have, and I know that I'm the one that's usually doesn't really have.
I never go out. I
never go out and never do anything.
Yeah.
Well, this time I actually did go out, and I did get some stuff at my local comic shop. You might remember from a little while ago, our illustrious Bill here had picked up or had gotten a Volume 1 Superpowers mini comic collection. Well, guess what I picked up, which I'm going to be sending over to him very shortly. Superpowers mini comic collection Volume 2. Which Bill actually informed me is probably the last one, because the series 3 didn't have comics.
Yes, with an asterisk. This is what a Superpowers Kennerline expert I am on this, and this was without research. Going to the internet, I already knew this from years of reading. That there were a handful of figures, Shazam, Cyborg, and Plastic Man, where the Brazilian issues of the Wave 3 figures did have comic book inserts for those figures. They weren't original stories, as were these mini comics, but technically there were Wave 3 comics in one region.
So, wow. Well, that is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll be grabbing this.
Very excited this
about that. Very soon. Awesome. So very, very cool. And if I can remember the link for this, there is an Etsy store where you can pick this up, because it is not widely available. It's unofficial.
It's a fan made. I like that term. It's fan made. Yes.
Looks like we've actually had a couple people join us. Before we continue, we've got John Runyon here.
Hey, John.
Assemble. Hello, John.
I feel bad. I had John's show on last night. I had that on, and then something happened, and I basically only watched the very early intro with him and John, and I do know that John was wearing a really cool Venom shirt and a Venom and Spidey hat. So there's your proof. I did tune in very briefly. Hey, Tony, talked to Tony earlier this week
Yeah.
too. How
Yeah,
you
Tony
doing?
Gilkinson. Hey,
Yep.
handsome guys. Aw,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank
Aw.
you.
Okay, so let's see, what else did I get? So I also, a couple months ago, all of us were gushing about a book by Manny Murphy called "I Never Promised You a Rose Garden." Well, Manny also has an Etsy store where they sell a lot of classic, hard to find first edition or otherwise paperbacks. And randomly found several copies of their previously published works because they published several other comics, self-published comics, and small print comics under their previous name, Annie Murphy. So I went and I picked up all three that they had. So the first is a book called Symbology, which is a history. It's an A to Z grimoire, essentially, of just all sorts of really cool, pagan, Judeo-Christian, proto civilization symbols that have kind of followed us to the modern day, and just a lot of history and cool stories around. It is very, very interesting, really cool read. And then also this really interesting biography, sort of like hybrid autobiography biography of
This looks fascinating.
the spiritualist,
Yeah.
Axa Sprague,
I'm gonna get
who's
this one.
from New England in the mid 1800s, and it's called "I Still Live: Biography of a Spiritualist." It is very cool. It was a really, really, really interesting. Goes into Manny's history in Vermont, getting a degree and working with the Comics Art Center and the Comics Center there, but then also into the history of early 1800s to mid 19th century spiritualism. Very cool, very interesting. Lots of poetry, lots of cursive. Warning for anybody who's a millennial, lots of cursive writing. And then finally, and I haven't read through this just yet, Gay Genius, where Manny was an editor on this. And it's just a collection, it is a compilation of some really great gay comics. And Manny was really awesome and actually signed it. So thank you, Manny. Thank you so much. And just, I'm so excited to read this when I have a chance, because it just looks like a really great compilation of different artists and stuff. So those three things are wonderful. Thank you again, Manny. Make more stuff so I can buy it. And then also, this came. Starman Compendium 1. Smells wonderful, and it's like 800 some pages. This thing is a beast. It could kill large bugs or small rodents. It is really cool, and I'm really excited to flip through it. I've already got several of the original trade volumes, but there's a lot of stuff in here that I did not have. So it's got
they did fill it in nicely with a lot of the esoterica, the annuals and
different annuals,
showcase
miniseries.
Appearances. Yeah, they did a really nice job.
So much. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. So what'd you get?
I got a book that can go bonk too, but it's a little different. This came from a recommendation by my friend Scott Bodenheimer, and this is a prose novel about a supervillain. The author is Natalie Zena Walschatz, and the book is named Hench. And when I posted about this, my friend Sharon Galbraith-Ryer, who's a librarian and very much has their finger on the pulse beat of youth fiction, gushed about this. So I'm very much looking forward to reading this. Apparently it's like a beautiful midpoint between the boys and a lot of the more interesting teen literature. So very much looking forward to reading that when I have a chance. I got some new apparel today. I'm not wearing it because God knows I got to iron it first. But through Teespring, I got a Super Friends shirt, but it's not the Super Friends you may think. It's all the characters that were created for the show. Very often, the sidekicks, you have the Marvin, Wendy, and Wonder Dog, and also the Wonder Twins and Gleek, but also what are commonly known as the I hate saying this, but the affirmative action Super Friends that we've grown up since then. But Apache Chief El Dorado, Rima, Samurai, and Black Vulcan, without his pants, with just the booties.
He got to show off. He got to show off those massive
So,
hands. It was leg day every day.
yeah.
For Black
So
Vulcan.
much like the Superpowers mini collection, let's call this fan made, but very happy to get that.
It's the Friends of Super Friends.
Yeah. And I didn't get any superhero toys, but I did get something that was pretty interesting. I became a later in life fan of Hot Wheels, and I know Hot Wheels can get pricey, just like any toy line. But the core line is still, in the dollar range. And every year they have a Halloween set, and this year these are just beautiful. They're based on the Day of the Dead. So there are 5 of these in the series of various cars, and just really, really well done paint jobs and construction. And I got all 5. So that was my other sort of geeky get.
And if you keep them in perfect condition, someday you can sell them and go to college.
Yeah, but you can also buy one and play with one. True. Maybe I did that.
Do you have the little orange loop-de-loop set up somewhere in the house?
Oh, we have one. Yeah, we have one. Yeah, we do. It's over there. Yeah, and it's pretty freaking cool.
Well, you're not alone here, John Runyon. These Hot Wheels are amazing. Those Hot Wheels are amazing, and yes, I'm sure they actually look pretty dang cool under a black light too, John.
Yeah, possibly, but yeah, and again, these are the base. This is the baseline, so they're at most $1 and change, at most, and you can find those. So, but like just since they're seasonal, we're talking Halloween. Come early November, they'll probably be very hard to find. So if you're gonna get them, don't wait. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
That's pretty neat. I haven't really been into Hot Wheels since I was 7 or 8.
Well, the thing is, I was never into Hot Wheels as a kid. I just wasn't. I had 2 Tonka toys, a Jeep, and a car carrier. I wasn't into trains. Most of the vehicles I had were superhero vehicles.
Where you could open them up and they had other things inside, like a playset kind of thing.
Yeah, I just wasn't into cars, and I don't know, something happened a few years ago, and now I kind of regret some of the some of the character lines, because some of those, there's a Hanna-Barbera set that came out about 10 years ago that is beautiful, and again, these were $1. This is in their lowest retail line. So, but there are some that can get really pricey.
I mean, just like comics, comics. I mean, there's some
prestige format.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but hey, should we give this interview a shot?
Absolutely. But let me just pray again to the tech gods that this works, because again, this is the first time we tried this.
Yep. So
I'm hoping above all hopes this works. So, and also I haven't seen the interview myself yet, so I'm very much looking forward to this.
Well, hopefully I don't embarrass myself too much. Chris was an absolute delight. We were able to catch him in the middle of a comic and arts festival, arts event that was happening in the UK, and I think Joe Glass was also in attendance to that, and a few other people that we know from the previous years and from brother sister organizations as well. But he was able to take an hour out of his day, find a nice quiet conference room, and his connection was amazing. I'm hoping mine was amazing. It seemed fine for me, but we'll see how the recording goes. There are a couple little blips here and there, but he was just an absolute delight, very fascinating person. And again, Fanny Galactic, Tuck to the Future was the first volume that he was able to kickstart last year, and was what came out earlier this year. I do recommend, if you can get this, hunt this down. It is wonderful. Or check out the Kickstarter for Crime and Disorder, which is volume number 2. I'll put the link up in the chat. Also, just as an FYI, I think everybody can still chat and make comments, so please do, and we'll talk about them after the interview is complete. Yeah, hopefully, okay, fingers crossed. Hopefully this all works, and if it goes well, maybe we'll be able to do something like that again in the future.
Please,
maybe do
yes,
other stuff,
please.
which makes it a lot easier for us.
Yeah.
If, especially with comic creators who are in very different time zones from us,
Yeah,
it makes it a little bit easier for us to, bring them on the show and promote them. So, okay, everybody say a prayer. Let's give it a shot. Welcome to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Steve Morey, and I am here with Chris Fildes, the writer and creator of Fanny Galactic, which is now a comic series. The first book was released last year of Kickstarter, Fanny Galactic, Tuck to the Future. And now he has just released just opened the new Kickstarter for the follow-up book, Fanny Galactic, Crime and Disorder, and that's D''sorder. So we're really excited to have you here. I'm so happy I got to speak with you. Because of time zones and time differences, it's just going to be the two of us today, taking the time to talk about your new book, and also to talk about you, because we really are interested to learn about Mr. Chris Fildes.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for joining me. And like Bill likes to say, quoting a song from Loverboy, which I'm not a big, I don't know too much about Loverboy's back catalog of music, but he always says, let's start at the start. So Chris, what got you into comics?
Well, I've always been a big comics fan. Well, I say a big comics fan. I've read 2000 AD since I was probably about 5 years old, I think, and various kind of British comics, and kind of grew up reading those, dabbled in various other comics as I've got older, like Preacher, Why the Last Man, a bit of Saga recently, and independent comics. And I just read them all my life. And I always dabbled in writing story ideas and kind of wanted to write, but I never did anything about it. I used to have pads and pads and pads full of ideas, but I just never seemed to find the time or the motivation to actually sit down and write them. Then about 3 years ago, I'd had this script kind of in my head for quite some time, the original idea for Fanny Galactic, Tuck to the Future. And I had the synopsis for it, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I was kind of thinking, oh, will I write it as a film script? And I started writing it as a film script, and it wasn't really working. I was kind of, this isn't really the right medium for it. I should be writing it as a comic. So I just started writing it as a comic. And then I realized I could actually maybe take it to Kickstarter and actually turn it into something. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So as I say, I'm pretty new to writing, even though I've been writing various bits, ideas and things. Fanny Galactic is my first book. It's the first thing I've ever written from start to finish. So I'm really, really proud of that. So, that's basically how I got into it.
Awesome. No, I love that. And that's kind of the difference, because you're originally from the UK, and you live now in Ireland, correct?
Mm.
And so growing up.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, yeah, I grew up in England, and I moved to Ireland about 22 years ago.
Okay.
When did Princess Diana die? Actually, how many years ago was that? Because it was that
97?
97. So I basically came out to my friends the day after that happened. No, the day before that happened. That's how I remember. It was the day before Princess Diana died, and then the next day everything kind of happened about her. Stole my thunder.
Yes. How dare she?
So I ended up moving to Ireland a couple of months after that, and I've been there ever since, basically. So.
Oh, awesome! That's wonderful. But growing up, obviously, you have different. There's a lot of different comic books that you would be more, that you would be exposed to, as opposed to a lot of, say, North American readers who don't really have a lot of access to 2000 AD, which is unfortunate. We get a lot of reprints,
yes,
Judge Dredd and whatnot, and Zenith back in the 90s and 80s.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't have a lot of that. It's mostly just obviously Marvel and DC, but of course all the indie books that we have here. But no, what was kind of with 2000 AD and the other books that you read, what kind of was your biggest sort of inspiration? Were you more into sort of the sci-fi? Did you like the more mature horror? Did you like the fun kind of?
I think what I like about 2000 AD is the fact that it's an anthology and it has all of that, basically. So you could be reading something that's really silly in a comedy one moment, and you could be reading something that's more serious, then you could be reading a horror. Judge Dredd could be like that from week in, week out. One week it can be a comedy, and the next week it could be something really, really, really dark. And I like that. I like that anthology format. I like the fact that I don't know what I'm going to get when I read something. I've always been drawn to that, and I think because all the British comics when I grew up, it's completely different, the British comic scene when I was growing up. You basically there was a series of titles, and these titles, anthology titles, and they would be themed around a certain topic. So whereas 2000 AD would be sci-fi, they would also be ones like, I can't remember, there'd be ones themed around sport, or there was one called Battle that was themed around war. And these would come out once a week, and they'd have maybe 4 or 5 stories of 5-6 pages long. And so we didn't really ever have the likes of Batman or Superman style comics where there'd be something that came out once a month that would be one long story. It would be a weekly thing with 5 stories in. So I've always grown up with this variety of stuff. And 2000 AD or other comics that I've read, you'd have a series of stories, and then those stories would be constantly changing. So every week a new story might be starting. So I've always been more into that than reading something, just one story. So it's completely different, basically.
That's really cool, and I do feel sort of like there's a lot of genre mixing in Fanny Galactic, which I love. That's one of the things, because you're not really sure exactly. Is it is this part's really funny, but this part's kind of like, oh gosh, there's a little bit of a shock there. It's pretty cool, and I really do feel that that inspiration. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I was trying to do that with it. I was trying to have a mix of styles. I didn't want it to be the same style all the way through. I wanted people to be shocked and surprised when they turned the page. It was originally written as if it was going to be, I had this grand idea that I was going to release a gay 2000 AD or an LGBTQ 2000 AD. It'd be like a science fiction version of 2000, not science fiction version, sorry, a gay version of 2000 AD where there'd be 5 stories, all done by different writers and artists, or some of them would be written by me. Fanny Galactic would be serialized over 6 episodes, 6 issues. I was imagining I'd probably do an issue every 3 months or every 4 or 5 months. But so if you read Fanny Galactic, you'll probably see that it's kind of it's serialized into five chapters, and each one of those has a beginning, middle, and end. So it's very much written as if it would have been serialized in a comic like 2000 AD. But once I started doing this, I realized, God, this is going to cost me a fortune. There's no way I'm going to be able to launch an anthology and pay, it was enough paying one artist to do 5 pages a month, let alone paying four artists and writers and letterers and designers. So I scrapped that idea and decided to turn it into a book, basically, but the goal was always to do an anthology kind of thing. I'd still like to do that, but at the moment I'm going to kind of focus on, releasing Fanny as it is. So.
Oh, that's actually really cool. That sounds like a wonderful idea. That's kind of what we need. We haven't had, I know in the US we had, end of the 70s through the early 80s, the gay comics, gay anthology comics that, were funny, satirical, had a lot of, were very political, obviously, because, you couldn't really release them publicly. They had a lot of times you had to go to a specialized bookstore or special order them or whatever, but they were very focused on the queer community, and it was interesting. I've got a couple anthologies and a couple books that sort of bring that up, and it's very very, very interesting. As you can tell, I have sort of a mess of books everywhere that haven't, anything that's in a pile has not been organized yet, so
that's fair
someday. But the other inspiration here, and I do love it. This is one of the other things that really attracted me to Fanny Galactic in the first place, is that it also features drag. It is, it's a drag story as well. And looking through your bio, you had talked about how you got into drag originally by fundraising for the Alternative Miss Ireland competition. I don't know much about that, and could you kind of talk about that and how that sort of got you into the drag community and the drag culture?
Yeah, no problem. So basically, when I moved to Ireland, I kind of was trying to kind of make friends all over the place, and I kind of got involved in something called the Irish Queer Archive, which was an archive of all kind of newspaper and media clippings about the, with LGBT stuff that happened in Ireland. And I came across a load of information about this thing called Alternative Miss Ireland, and the guy running the archive, Tony Walsh, he turned out to be involved in this competition, and I just was fascinated. I found all these photos of it. Basically, the idea is it started in 1987. It was a very small event in 1987, and the idea was it was like a beauty pageant, but anyone could enter. It didn't necessarily have to be drag queens, but of course, it was mostly drag queens because it's a pastiche of a normal beauty contest, basically. So I think the first year there was entrance. I think a dog entered it one year. So I don't know how it did the application form. I guess it's owner did the application form, but I never actually saw this. But I found out about the Alternative Miss Ireland, and what I did was, because I was volunteering to help my friend in the Queer Archives, and I said, I might make an archive of this, because there's just like stuff all scattered all over the place. There's boxes of it and newspaper clippings, and I started putting a website together, because I'm a web designer and a web developer, more of a web developer is my main job. So I started putting this website together for them, and when I had done it, they really loved it. The people organizing it really, really loved what I had done. And they said, why don't we turn this into the proper website for the Alternative Miss Ireland? So I became officially a kind of member of the committee at that point. And, I have to say, I didn't really do much except for the website. I went to the meetings. This group of people, they're all kind of really creative, arty types that have been kind of involved in the gay scene for various years. And they put this together every year. And it started off as this tiny little event. By the time I had joined, they started putting it on in one of the main theatres in Dublin. So you'd basically go to this competition like once a year. They called it Gay Christmas at the time in Dublin, because Pride at the time wasn't really much of a thing in Dublin, to be quite honest. It's only become a big thing over the last few years. But Alternative Miss Ireland on the bank holiday weekend in March was seen as the big event of the year. Everybody would go to it. It was so exciting, because you'd go to the theatre to see a big gay event. And it was 12 contestants, or roughly 12 contestants, and they would do a morning wear round, swimwear round, and an evening wear round. And it wasn't about the costumes, funnily enough. It was actually it was mostly acts. It was kind of, they would put on really amazing costumes, but it was really good comedy, original stuff. It was just fantastic. I just couldn't believe it. I just thought, this is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. And I just became really drawn towards the drag. And what really excited me was, this was my first experience of drag, really, except for seeing it on the television. But this was like really edgy, rough around the edges. I'll get into trouble for saying this for some of them that are doing really well now, but it was rough around the edges. People would muck up on stage. In fact, we wanted people to muck up on stage. We wanted people to make a mistake, because that made it more exciting. It made it more raw, and it had this energy to it. What is going to happen? Who is going to make a mistake? Who's going to do something really shocking? And there were some really shocking things that happened in it at times as well. It was just fantastic. And I got involved in this, and I just love drag. And to be honest with you, I always wanted to be a drag queen, but I would be absolutely awful on stage. I would just crumble. I just wouldn't be able to do an act in front of all those people. But maybe now I might be able to. Now I'm a little bit older, but I used to have a little bit of social anxiety. So me standing up in front of an audience would just be terrible. I did it once, I entered a competition once, and I came last. I was talked into doing it by a friend, and he basically said, we need to make up the numbers. And he kind of gave me a costume. He was kind of working in a bed and breakfast at the time. And he basically said, come upstairs. And, he bought me a costume, bought me some tights. And I was shaving my legs, putting on these tights, kind of dressing up. He blew up a condom full of water, basically, as a pair of tits. And basically and then I ended up waiting around for 2 or 3 hours, because I was doing this after work, and I realized the competition didn't start till 10 o'clock at night. So I had to kind of just wander around like this. And then I went to do this act, and it was just a disaster. I just stood there on stage like a rabbit in headlights, and was terrible. But I still love drag, basically. And I just thought when I was first writing, I wanted to write something I want to write stuff with characters that are a little bit different. And I don't think anyone's really written about drag queens very much. And I didn't want to write about young drag queens, because it doesn't really interest me that much. I thought a drag queen that had been around for like 20 or 30 years, they've seen everything. They've seen absolutely everything that's happened on the scene, from the original kind of rights movement to how it's grown, to like gay marriage, to HIV/AIDS, to everything. You know, so there's a lot of really interesting stuff, a lot of really interesting stories you can tell through drag queens. But also you can have a lot of fun with it as well. You don't actually have to be, you can look at really serious topics, but in a very, very humorous way. As you'll see with Fanny Galactic, there's, you know, it's a lot of fun and a lot of comedy all the way through. And then every so often I might hit you with something that you might not expect. Basically, there might be a moment where you're like, oh, okay, that's what it's about. That's what it's really about. And I think that's what kind of drew me to writing about them. So.
Excellent. That definitely does bleed through. I mean, you know, nowadays, of course, drag race kind of style drag has been, you know, really exported everywhere. That sort of featuring sort of the newest and the latest and the, you know, the Instagram queens and the, you know, basically who, you know, queens who are just on the edge of everything, which is wonderful too. I mean, it's and it's valid drag, and there's lots of different styles of that. There are people who are, you know, really on the cutting edge of that type of performance and performance art. But there's sort of this classic part of the community, this, you know, that's been there since the beginning. You know, at least the beginning of recorded gay history, because there's a lot of quiet history that's existed for a long time. But the drag queens, like you said, they've been there, they've seen it all. They've been there from, you know, before there were any possible rights at all, where everything was illegal. All the way to now, and there's these personalities.
I mean, it's one thing. I watch RuPaul's Drag Race occasionally. I don't watch it too much, actually, which might surprise you considering I'm writing about drag queens. I prefer the more rough and ready stuff, to be honest. I find it a little bit too polished, a little bit too cookie cutter, if that's the right word. I find a lot of stuff where there's a lot of people on it that just seem to be imitating people that are on previous seasons and things like that. And I mean, that is part of drag as well. You know, there are people do imitate other people, and it's fine. But I was always drawn to this, you know, small gay bar with somebody up on stage, probably maybe a little bit drunk, kind of doing an act on stage and kind of making mistakes, and, you know, the humor falling flat sometimes and a bit rude, and kind of, I love all of that. I think that excites me much more than you know, than the RuPaul stuff. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with it at all. Like it is a huge part of drag culture now, but I'm more interested in the other side of it, I think. So
the drag brunch hosts, the nighttime club MCs who have been doing the same gig for 20 years in the same club, like that. There's a personality, there's sort of a, you know, a concreteness of understanding of who they are that really comes through, and they're much more memorable. I think there's, you know, there's this idea that like these people are permanent. These people are you know, something that's a bit of permanence in a culture that, you know, that tends to move very quickly. You know, so but no, and I love that. I like that choice in Fanny Galactic a lot, because you do have these characters that are established. They're not sort of the cookie cutter, like, oh well, they're, you know, young pretty drag queens that all kind of, you know, look as perfect as possible. These are queens who have been around, who've seen different things, but who also, they know who they are and they know what they can do, and what, you know, that's why people like them. That's why they're, you know, there. And I really do appreciate that. But cool. So let's talk about the other contributors to the book. I know Edward Bentley is back drawing the next installment, the Crime and Disorder installment, and I believe Nikki Powers doing lettering as well.
Yeah, exactly. So Ed came back to the book, and I'm so glad. He's just brilliant. Like I auditioned so many people for Fanny Galactic. I put a post up on a group on a Facebook group connecting comic book artists and writers, and I put the premise up, and I got about 60 responses. People wanting to pitch, and I narrowed it down to maybe 10 people, and then narrowed that down again, paid a few people to audition, basically, and, you know, got some good stuff, actually. Got some really, really good stuff, some really good, interesting stuff, some stuff that actually took it in a different direction to what I had imagined, but I found quite interesting. and I might go back to those people with some spin-offs or some other ideas in the future. But Ed just nailed it. Like every character that I came up with, like, you know, if you look at the back of the book, you'll see his original designs. And even though his original design for Fanny Galactic is actually kind of what ended up being Sybil D'Sorder, the characters are exactly as they are in the book. Basically, you see Dr. Hands, the flying dentist. That's his second go at Fanny Galactic, and it's exactly how she appears in the book. Dr. Hands is exactly the same. Everyone, like Koval, like it was just, I couldn't believe that every single character I was describing, I'd get the art back from him, and I'd go, that is exactly. It's either exactly how it is in my head, or it's actually better than it was in my head. He's just like he's so good to work with. So most of the time, I'm not going to say all of the time. You can be grumpy.
Hey, grumpy artists, you know, they have their perks too.
It's fine. He puts up with my anxiety when I'm running Kickstarters. So.
Well, actually, let's speak about that. Let's speak about the new Kickstarter that just started 4 days ago at the time that this is being recorded. So that was 31st.
Yes, 31st.
I can count. Yes, I can count. Okay, there we go. October 31st. And as of now, I believe just 4 days in, you're 50% funded, which is excellent. And we're going to provide the link for all the viewers and listeners so that they have an opportunity to go and also support the Kickstarter as well. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about this follow-up to Fanny Galactic Tuck to the Future. And the next book is Fanny Galactic Crime and Disorder. And it's a little bit different. It's focusing on a little bit of a different set of characters.
Yes, actually, yeah, it's quite a different story, actually. Now, in the first book, Fanny Galactic is on stage and her wind machine explodes and she goes off into the future and she finds out the world has been taken over by a drag queen. And without giving too much away, she finds out that the drag queen is someone she knew in the present, basically. So that book ends in a cliffhanger, which takes us into a future Fanny Galactic story, which I'm probably going to do next. But I decided, I had a lot of feedback from the first book. People really, really liked the Sybil D'Sorder character, the evil drag queen in it. And people were asking, people said they really enjoyed the flashback scenes that were showing kind of the world being taken over by a drag queen. And I started writing a load of flashback scenes in the follow-up to Fanny Galactic. And then I kind of thought, actually, no, this deserves a story of its own. It shouldn't be part of the follow-up. This is actually kind of quite a strong story. And it's different. It's a bit darker. So we go back to the night of the explosion and we find out that, find out what happens next, basically. Sybil D'Sorder is a character and she basically ends up taking over the world, and we find out why she did it. And then we find out how she did it as well, which I'm actually quite pleased with as well, because I've managed to kind of explain how a drag queen ends up taking over the world. And hopefully I've made it really realistic, and hopefully no drag queens are going to see it and try to follow Sybil D'Sorder's master plan as well. It's a good master plan, I promise.
Oh yeah, no, because I have read spoilers. I have read a few of the preview pages, so that you've made available for review, and it's got some interesting. It's an interesting direction to do it, and really, I think is a great explanation for how this happens.
Yeah, I wanted it to still be funny, but I wanted it to be a kind of slightly darker humor. There's a bit of dark humor in the first one. What I kind of thought was Fanny Galactic is a really she's a classic drag queen that you might see in a small gay bar in Britain. She's a bit rude, she's a bit crude, she's a bit loud, and the first book really reflects that. Basically, it's very much about Fanny, and the sequel is more about a friend of hers called Violet Crime and a villain called Sybil D'Sorder, and they're both darker, more complex characters. Violet Crime, who is one of the characters in the second book, she's kind of used to be a punk rocker in the 80s, punk rock style drag queen, and she's much more of an anarchist and much more serious and involved in politics and kind of campaigning and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to reflect a little bit more of that in the book. That's not to say it's a really serious book. It's not a serious book at all, but it has more political moments, and it really starts to delve into what it was like kind of growing up gay in the 80s and the 90s in Britain, and how growing up in a homophobic state, which it was a homophobic state, there were laws being brought in that, you wouldn't be able to, the thing called Section 28 that we had, meant that people could not promote homosexuality. So if you were employed by the state and you promoted homosexuality, you could be fired. So what that meant was if you were a teacher and a student came to you and said, I'm being bullied, I've just got called a horrible name, I just got beaten up because I'm gay, that teacher couldn't do anything to help you. If that teacher actually helped you and raised that as an issue, they could probably be fired, basically. And that was the situation. It stopped me getting into teaching. I wanted to be a teacher when I was growing up. And growing up in a situation like that where you're told, you know, you're basically being told there's something wrong with being gay, and it's coming from the state and it's coming from the people teaching you. That's really, really bad. And, you know, we're a generation that grew up with that, but not just that. There's a generation, I came out quite late. I came out in my mid-20s, but people that came out much younger, they also probably had to deal with the HIV crisis and losing friends to AIDS and things like this. Again, with no real support from anyone around them. And I wanted to kind of explore how people that have grown up with that might have been affected by it, basically. And you find out that, you know, Sybil D'Sorder, the character who's the villain, she has been very badly affected by that. Even though she puts up this big front, that she's this kind of funny drag queen and stuff. It is the spark that kind of sets off her wanting for revenge. And, you know, I'm making this sound really, really serious. This is the kind of undercurrent to the story, but it's done in a way that's kind of quite humorous, I think, I hope, and quite kind of, yeah.
No, that I definitely feel that, you know, reading the first book and then reading the review pages that you have, you feel that, and I think that's something that really can really only be expressed going back to that to established drag queens, you know, who are of a particular generation, who understand sort of where we were and how far we've come, even though we still have quite a bit to go. But, you know, that Section 28, I've done a lot of reading on that. I've seen, you know, plenty of documentaries on that. Obviously, from a U.S. perspective, we don't have anything at the federal level, but states are very much, because they set their own agendas when it comes to education and things like that. We do have several states that famously do have that. That type of requirement on the law books as well, and Arizona was one recently that it became very much in the news because of how strict it was. So there's a lot of that as well, and I think, you know, listeners and watchers of our show as well, because we do have, you know, people from an older generation. We have a lot of straight listeners and viewers as well, who may not understand that there are these laws, these, you know, that really make it difficult to be gay, and really do highlight, you know, how much work we still need to do. I know in some cases these laws have been overturned, but there's still, you know,
I mean, I was talking to a friend about Section 28 recently, you know, and I was talking about how they're bringing something similar into Hungary, or they're trying to bring something similar into Hungary. And I think there's an attitude, and it's the same kind of attitude that people like, you know, maybe friends and family might have had in the 80s, whereas, you know, why would you want to promote homosexuality? You know, why would you be promoting that? But they don't understand the ramifications of what that means. What that means is erasing us. It doesn't mean promoting it. It means erasing your existence, basically. I know that kind of sounds a little bit over the top, but telling you that you don't really have a right to be gay, basically. There's something wrong with it. And, you know, fundamentally that affects people, basically. That sticks with people. And I'm trying to, with my books, I'm trying with this series to kind of bring a little bit of that into it. You know, we have a lot of stuff now that we didn't have when I was growing up. I think it's absolutely fantastic, but it could easily go backwards. You know, we could easily start to see people trying to kind of erode those rights. And you're seeing a little bit at the moment. There's an organization called LGB Alliance, they're called, and they've deliberately not got the T because they're not really an LGBT alliance. They're not really a gay or an LGBT supporting organization. It's basically an anti-trans organization, and getting government funding. They're getting tons of press coverage as if they are sticking up for feminists and for people in the world, but they are actually an anti-LGBT organization, because dropping the T from it is trying to divide us, and it's trying to it's the thin end of the wedge. Once they get rid of that T, it'll be the B next, or then it'll be the L, you know, and you know they'll keep going until you know, I just think it's terrible, and we're seeing that, and that worries me a little bit. And it worries me how much these people are getting coverage on the TV and they're not getting questioned. They're not, people aren't saying, they're even on the BBC and they're being kind of treated as if they are a rights organization, and they're not a rights organization. They're a hate organization.
Yeah. Anti-rights organization.
Yeah. And I'll say hate because I've seen people being kind of abused by them. There's an actor in Scotland at the moment, and he's basically been, he's a gay actor, and he's been supporting the trans rights movement. He's absolutely fantastic, and he's basically been driven out of his home. He's left Scotland. He's moving somewhere else because he's just getting so much abuse. I just think it's awful. Basically, that's why I think it's important to be shining a light on stuff that's happened before, and just to try to kind of recognize what's happened before and try to kind of stop it happening again. Basically,
Yeah. And that's it is very serious, and a lot of times people either just don't understand it, and because it's so big, it has so much potential to get worse and to snowball and be even more restrictive and more more divisive is perfect. That is a perfect way of doing it. You start cutting pieces away, and then the whole is gone. And that's that's been tactics, I think, from from political side for a very long time. If you can't just do a blanket thing, then just start picking away, and then eventually it's all gone, and people don't really notice until it is definitely gone. Except for the people, of course, who have been affected by it every single time.
Exactly. I think one of the things I'm trying to cover in Crime and Disorder as well is, there was a lot of homophobia in politics in the 80s in Britain. And I'm trying to say, those people are still there. Those people are still in politics. They haven't gone away. They're quieter, but they're still there. And you know what? A lot of them probably still feel the same way. And that you'll probably get that from what you've read in the book. But, we just have to kind of be careful that those people don't kind of get emboldened and start trying to kind of erode the rights that we've got. We fought hard for these rights. We don't want them taken away.
Exactly. And sometimes one of the best ways of illustrating that, or getting that message out to people who may not be thinking about that, is through other medium. Putting it in a comic, putting some humor in there to mix that in with the with the really serious messages. And I think Fanny Galactic does a great job of that.
Thanks very much. I think one of the things that I'm really, really trying very hard with is I'm covering some weighty topics there in the background. In the first book, you don't really get it till the end, and you might not. Some people have read it and haven't even got what I'm trying to say with one of the characters and some of the things that are affecting them. But that's fine, because it's kind of more. It gets explored a little bit more in the second one, basically. So,
well, excellent.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, definitely, if you can support the book for the readers and the listeners, viewers, etc. If you can support the book on Kickstarter, we will get to see what happens next with Fanny Galactic, and definitely get to read more of that story with Sybil D'Sorder, as well as the other characters, Violet Crime, Sally Titanic. And get to see what happens with them. I have a little bit of a love for Sally Titanic, because of
everyone's
course
saying this.
Sally Titanic is a very interesting type of drag queen. Definitely, I think sometimes they're referred to as skag drag, because they're definitely not
skag drag
presenting super feminine as drag. Just sort of you have the clothing, the makeup, but are big burly bear of a dude, or have the beard, and bearded drag is definitely something that's been brought more attention, I think, in the past several years. We've obviously the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence here in the US, but in other parts of the world too, bearded drag, or sort of non-traditional, purposefully mixing the masculine and the feminine, like the overly masculine and the feminine together. It's very interesting. Sally Titanic is great.
Yeah, I love her. She was only supposed to be in the funny thing was, and it's part of the writing process, Sally was only originally in the first scene in Back to the Future. And then I won't give away too much about the story, but she comes back later in the story. But actually, the character later on in the story was originally a completely different character.
Really?
Oh. And then I kind of went, oh no, that's stupid. It's obviously her. Why, So realized I created a character I didn't need to, and I kind of merged the two together. And then I started really enjoying her. And then it ends up that she ends up becoming probably the most important character in the book, which I really, really enjoyed. And I've actually started writing. I mean, the idea was there was going to be 3 main Fanny Galactic books. There's basically going to be Tons of the Future, which is set in the future. Then there's going to be the follow-up book, which is called 20,000 Weeks Under the Sea, which is the one I'm working on at the moment. This is another pun on a film title. And this finds Fanny Galactic on the Titanic, basically, in the past. And then there was going to be a final third one, which I won't give away too much about. This is kind of the main one where all the strands kind of come together. Then I started writing Crime and Disorder, and then I kind of thought, I have an idea for a Sally story. I have this idea for a really, really fun story that just tells you how her kind of origin, how she ends up in the situation she ends up in the book. It's a complete comedy. There's absolutely nothing serious in this follow-up at all. So I'm hoping to do that at some point. I don't know when I'm going to get around to doing that. I might save that for the kind of collected edition of all of them in the future and have it as a kind of extra story. My artist loves drawing Sally as well. He's asked for more. He said, "Will you please draw more Sally in the sequel?" And then, of course, she's hardly in Crime and Disorder at all, but she's in the Titanic story a lot. And she's in the final story a lot. And wait till you see what I've done with her in the final story. It's like I told Ed about it the other day, and thought it was he really liked it. So her character goes in a very, very different direction. I'm not going to say anymore. I'll give away too much if I say anymore.
Yes, please give away everything. Please. No, that's awesome. These characters are just so much fun, and I'm really excited to see Crime and Disorder when it is fully funded, because I have no doubt it will be fully funded.
I hope so. I really do. I get worried about these things. This is only the second Kickstarter I've done. The first one got funded in 2 days. So I was completely spoiled, basically. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And of course, the second one starts, and I'm like, it's got to 50%, which is absolutely fantastic. I've only had it for 4 days, but I'd love it to get, I'd love it to get funded.
Yes.
I don't mind if it takes another week or 2, but I'd like it to get funded as soon as possible. So if you're watching this and I'm still not funded, please fund me.
Yes, please fund. And again, like I said, we'll be putting the link in the show notes so that everybody who's interested can actually go and check it out. We're really excited for this next book, and I'm really glad I got to speak to you about it, and also about what inspires you and what kind of led you to creating and working with Fanny Galactic, bringing that
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So.
Thank you again, and again, tune in for stay tuned for some more Comic Book Bears chat. We will be right back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Did it work?
My mic was muted. What I said was it worked out very well, and you did a very good interview. Congrats, Steve. I think we've been, this happened to me when I was solo, when I interviewed Andy Mangels for the show. I'm so used to doing the throw over to somebody because, other people have different perspectives on the same work, and it's nice that we have that normally, but you did a very good job. Congratulations. And it sounds like a fascinating guy, Chris, and really interested in looking into this Kickstarter.
Yeah, I absolutely loved the first volume, and one of the cool things that he mentioned in the interview was that he originally intended it to be sort of like a gay anthology series,
right?
And kind of like how he structured the first book,
2000 gay
separate,
yeah,
2000 gay D, exactly.
Yeah.
And like the first Fanny Galactic, it's structured in that way where each chapter can kind of stand alone, and you can totally see it as part of like a weekly or monthly anthology book. Just having him put it out as like a full book, it's really cool. And he's doing the same thing with Crime and Disorder as well. So I did put the link to the Kickstarter. It's in the chat for everybody, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, and we'll put it in the show notes as well. Definitely, it's got several more weeks to go, about 2.5-3 weeks. don't wait until the last minute.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you are interested in this, please go ahead and support. And I think you can also get copies, either digital or actual book copies of the first Fanny Galactic book through this. So
through the Kickstarter,
it's a good way to get through the Kickstarter. So it's a good way to get.
That's great.
That and the new book when the new book's released. So give it a shot.
And I'm glad this happened, just because of my unavailability that we were able to do this. And, especially when you do have a Kickstarter and time is of the essence, it's really good that we were able to do this. So awesome. Worked out really well. Yeah.
I was happy that our time zones were able to work out where I could actually,
and also,
find time to interview him.
There was some meat on the bone there talking about, I knew it as Clause 28. Apparently, it's actually Section 28. I think because of a Boy George song. That was more than I know. But it was a very good conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that that was a big issue in the 80s in the UK, and yet here we are. It's the 21st century. It's 2021, and we've got states that are putting out no promo homo laws today, new. On the books because they don't want to promote the homosexual lifestyle to young people, which is basically another way of saying if you're gay, it's bad. We don't want kids to know anything about it because if they did, they'll know that they're bad.
Because
bad kids being gay, it's bad. So it's bullshit. But anyway,
it's all bullshit. No, it's just we've had. The day that we're recording this is the day that Biden had his angry dad vibe press conference about COVID, and it was so good. Yeah. And of course, the backlash was immediate and doesn't take into account that Nixon did the same goddamn thing, created OSHA. It's just
Nixon did well. And what's funny is we're starting to get a lot more angry public figures who are standing up and using their platforms to basically say, guys, it's worse now than it was a year ago when we were still in lockdown in most of this country. How is that possible when we've got a vaccine that over half people?
My freedom.
Yeah.
My freedom.
Yeah.
Fuck your freedom. Yeah.
You're starting to sound like Howard Stern.
That was such an awesome moment.
Never expected that, but then again, it is Howard Stern. He can.
Well,
that's what he's known for. He's known for.
Yeah, and look, if you track his politics over the last 12 years or so, I think people may have a misconception from. Basically what led up to 9/11. I wholeheartedly request people seek out, and he put the entire show up for free. His interview with Hillary Clinton after the election, which is probably the best interview I've seen with her, bar none. Because she's relaxed and she's not afraid to let a cuss word out or two, and I think only he could have had that interaction with her at that point. So, I've been a Stern fan for a long, long time. I wasn't so much that I had to get, once he left terrestrial, that I had to get I've had it in fits and spurts, but no, there's a lot of gold there. So,
hey, when I worked in a warehouse, it was D. Snyder. Just right into Howard Stern every day. And you know what? It was fun. It was great. I enjoyed Robin. I thought she was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a lot of... So, we won't go into that. Yeah. But I did want to bring up, John Runyon just mentioned, Bears are bringing the gospel tonight. And I do have to say, thank you, Chris Fildes, for bringing up some really cool stuff, too, in the interview. So, but yeah.
Okay, well, we're up against the clock again, trying to do a 90-minute show here somehow, and we're still going to try to do that. But I think it means we'll be discussing one book. I think there's a discussion we have to table. I did use some of my downtime to get caught up in the world of Black Hammer. So I did get through Barbalian. I did get through the amazing, amazing Visions, which is where Jeff Lemire has other writers tackle the characters. And as I said to you in a chat, every major comic book writer should be mandated that they have to write a Black Hammer story, because all of these have been excellent. And a series that's just got its start in Black Hammer Reborn, which is basically a rarity among the Black Hammer stories, and it's actual contemporary storyline. But I know Caleb's a big fan, and I know you read it, and at some point we'll talk about it and make a bigger deal than just the end segment there. But apart from that, why don't you tell us about something you're reading that you're digging?
So one thing that this just came out this Wednesday, and again, most people know that I tend to go to Charlotte to get my comics on the weekend, and I come back and I read them, for the following week. Well, this one, I actually walked into a comic store yesterday on New Comic Book Day, and picked up issue number 1 of Last Flight Out, and it was an intriguing premise. I had like the 2-bit pitch on it, which is not too distant future, environmental collapse. The majority of Earth's population is getting the F out. And it just goes from there. And essentially the first issue introduces you to this world in tangent. Like there's basically the main story of a doctor who happens to be the architect, that's ARK, architect, the creator of the of these giant ships that are taking humanity or whoever wants to leave Earth, out to the stars, and his relationship with his family. He was not there for the birth of his daughter, leaving his wife alone in the hospital while he worked on his, on his tech. Wasn't there when his wife was killed in a car accident, leaving his daughter, the only survivor, and he wasn't there with her growing up. It was important for him because he knew what was coming. The focus is that environmental collapse was going to happen. Climate change had reached a peak point, and he knew that the end of the world, where basically Earth would become uninhabitable for its population, wasn't too far away, and he had to finish it. He was working for the Earth and not for his own flesh and blood. Fast forward to the day before the last of 3 arcs is going to be leaving the Earth, with 2/3 of the Earth's population having been evacuated. That still leaves 1/3 of the human population left on the planet, and they are there by choice, the majority of them, which is very interesting. And so you have little Twitter feed, you have little notes here and there talking about how it's all a hoax, how everybody's just throwing away their resources on some crazy loopy endeavor, and it's all made up, and nobody's really going to die, and the Earth's fine, and don't believe the hype, and blah 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 blah. Well, 2/3 of the people actually did, so they're off, leaving everybody else behind. But his daughter, his grown daughter, is nowhere to be found. He does find her in Chicago, which is half a world away, and he wants her to come with him because this is the last chance. After their go, there's no way that anybody's getting off Earth. That's it. They have 10 years max, and everybody's going to die, or at least Earth will become uninhabitable, and whoever's left behind, fend for themselves. And so, of course, starts this book. And, as anybody can tell, having read comics, having seen any kind of disaster movie, and this is a perfect disaster movie setup. I mean, this could be filmed tomorrow, probably starring The Rock or something. But it gets wild right away. So, again, it's called Last Flight Out. It is written by Mark Guggenheim, a good favorite of a lot of people. The artist here is Eduardo Ferrigato. And he's actually also credited as co-creator for this. I haven't seen anything of his before, but I am just really enjoying the emotional aspect of his faces. Like, he really does know how to draw a lot of dynamic action and a lot of emotional face. Colors is Marcelo Costa, letterer, designer Diego Sanchez, and editor Kyle Higgins. Put out by Dark Horse. It is one of 6. Totally recommend it. Last Flight Out #1 just came out, and there are 5 more issues to go. So Give it a shot.
All right. Well, though I do my normal monthly DC catch up with the DC VS box, one area with DC that I am woefully not caught up in is in their former Zoom and Ink young reader and teen books. I still have a lot to get through. And I did get through a few, and one that I got through is We Found a Monster. We Found a Monster was published last year, I believe, like right at the tail end of 2020, I believe. No, it was earlier. 2000. It was more recent in time. Printed on December 4th, 2020, so it probably came out early 2021. It is written and drawn by Kirk Scroggs. Kirk had also done the Swamp Kid book. I enjoyed this far more than I enjoyed Swamp Kid. He has some other books out. He has his own series, Wiley and Grandpa's Creature Features and Snoop Troop, and he also works with other licensed characters. There's a series of Muppet books called Tales of a Sixth Grade Muppet, and he writes and draws those as well. In this story, you'll see here, this is the lead character, Casey Clive, which is a nod to certain horror films. And Casey is living with his father. Unfortunately, his mother's died. He's in high school, and he's an outcast. And he ends up taking in monsters in his house. So there's a bunch of monsters, and some of them are characters from the DC universe that have made appearances before. This gentleman over here, this is Topo, which had a long run as Aquaman's octopus. And hanging out under here is She-Bat, which is Francine Langstrom, Man-Bat's wife. So there are connections to the DC universe. There's also a connection to the Demon. There's a connection to a Justice League villain. Very clever, but also it's constructed so you don't have to know a thing about how about these characters going in. And so, as I mentioned, he keeps monsters at his house. There's a Frankenstein with an invisible arm, which causes a bunch of problems. And in high school, a new student comes in, and that's Xandra. And Xandra is taking care of this mysterious monster known as Spot. She brings him up to Clive's treehouse because she can't keep him in his house anymore. And they become friends, and they're tasked to provide the Halloween decorations for the town's Halloween. And they decide that, they can't keep this up anymore. Like his father's eventually going to find out that he has all these monsters in the house. So they decide they're going to go over to the abandoned pier and bring the monsters there. But when can they do it? They don't know when. Aha, Halloween, perfect time. So as the plans gestate, also what's going on in the background and who is hunting, might be Xandra, might be Spot, might be both of them. That works into the picture. It was really engaging, a lot of fun. Like I said, with Swamp Kid, I thought it was, books that are not as clever as they think they are. I walked away with that feeling. This one doesn't give off that vibe at all, and it's a remarkably clever book. So a big thumbs up for this one. We Found a Monster by Kirk Scroggs, and I love these books that there's nods to the DC universe, but little tweaks and it wouldn't matter. But if you go in knowing the backstory of a couple of these characters, it's a really nice reinterpretation. So
that's cool.
That one I got through.
So that one's definitely a much more successful like reinterpretation of young sort of DC characters than another recent one which involving Lois Lane.
Yes. It's almost like a Voldemort, which cannot be named.
Friendship challenge? What? No.
Man, I really laid into that one, man. Ooh, that one. Man, that one stunk. Oh,
we need a La Bamba button over here.
Yeah,
La Bamba. Like every time you pronounce it, just La Bamba.
I have it over here actually. Yeah, I'll put that over there.
Sitting on the shelf. What was the There's a great movie line about that. There it is over there, just waiting to suck. That crumb. It's gonna drive me nuts.
Oh, well, coming out of theater, there were some great put down lines that don't come out. It's like, I understand what you're trying to do. This is a great one. And he has a promising career behind him. There's some really, really, really horrible things, and I think that was, I have to say, like, I think this was kind of out of character for me to, but I was just so offended by it. And it's nice, and for all the books, I'm in the process of reading the Johnny Constantine kids novel, which so far has been pretty good. I'm about 2/3 of the way through that one. The Dear DC Supervillains, the Archimaniacs, they were both, there's still a lot of fun books in that series. So, and this one I think was the most fun so far. There's also the other books that that Raven and Beast Boy were part of, and the book that you talked about recently, that I'm Not Starfire, that are for slightly older readers. But from this book, it's nice that there's some gems in there after that one that just wasn't.
I feel bad harping on that book. I really do, but I mean, some people might find enjoyment from it, but it just, to me, was definitely not, and to you.
But also I do,
anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that when we have reviewed books, they've mostly been positive, because both of us, we both have read plenty of books that don't they don't hit the mark. I don't want to say, like, they suck. But there's some books that are very average reading experiences, especially when you get into like we are, that read monthly books. Not going to be a gem every time out. Not going to be a book that you're going to rave about every time out. The previous issue may have been fantastic, and then this next one might just be a bridge issue, and nothing happens except for 2 lines of dialogue that matter. I do have to say, through the history of the show, I'm very happy that we basically kept it on the positive end. We really have. And if there were negative words, sometimes it's where one of us enjoyed something, one of us didn't enjoy it as much. But we were able to, to properly demonstrate why, the rationale behind why we didn't enjoy it. There are plenty of podcasts out there just half la bombas, la ba.
Yeah.
Okay.
John Runyon says some books are just half a la bamba.
La ba.
Yes,
okay.
Right.
There's plenty of podcasts out there where it's bash, 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 and you have to question, like, is there anything you people enjoy? But at the same time, when you do have, when there are situations like that book, and for me also Batman Fortnite, the first issue, the read did improve as that series went on, but sometimes you do have to call stuff out, because hey, very often, sometimes it's based on characters you really love, and when you're seeing an interpretation of those characters that doesn't necessarily match your vision of them, but what you don't think matches an acceptable vision of them, I think there are times that you do have to become a bit of a negative Nelly.
Yeah. Well, at the same time too, and this is again why we tend to be a lot more positive in our reviews. We talk about books that we want other people to read. We talk about books that we enjoyed, and we want you to enjoy too. And so, just talking about negative books, it's especially in a podcast kind of environment where everybody's a critic and everybody's got something to say. If I'm talking about a negative book, I'm not encouraging other people to read it. I'm not encouraging anybody else to say, hey, form your own opinion. No, that's why I want to talk about positive things. It's like, I really liked it. I hope you like it too. And one of the other things too, and this, because I used to really, in my younger days, now that I'm so much older and more wise and mature, I used to kind of bash movies and TV shows and just harp on them and stuff. But at the same time, there's so much work that goes into making and putting out one of these, to putting out a comic book, to actually get your comic on the shelf, takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It doesn't just show up overnight.
Right. And that is whether it's an independent project or it's one of the major publishers.
DC
There's a remarkably,
Marvel.
involved process in getting a book out, particularly a monthly book, particularly a monthly periodic.
Yeah,
Just,
and so the fact that it showed up on the
work.
shelf means that somebody thought it was worth it to put on the shelf. May not have been us.
Yeah,
may not have been us, but somebody did, and maybe somebody will have some enjoyment from it as well. So again, that's just a long way of saying, like,
look,
we like to be positive.
I have to say this. We had a former co-host, and if this co-host did not enjoy a film, that was almost a guarantee that I would enjoy it. And I have to say that there was one film that was not talked about positively by them, and when I sought it out, it probably put it a little higher on my list, and I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. I got what the filmmaker was trying to do. Here I go with a little, tying into the thing before. But I got where the filmmaker was coming from, and I thought it was an inventive and particularly scary film. So sometimes there is that where there is somebody where they're like, they didn't take too kindly to it, and you're like, maybe I should check that out.
Yeah,
I have that a lot with music. I have that a lot with music too. There's people I know that
movie.
What?
That movie. What was that movie? Did you want to share what that movie was? You don't have to. That's fine.
I don't have to. I'll think about it. I will think about it. I can say this: it was a horror film. It was a horror film.
It was not Santa Claus the movie.
No, it was not Santa Claus the movie. Where'd you think that went out? Jesus.
Hey, it had Dudley Moore, John Lithgow. Come on, classic film.
Okay, so the clock is telling us to start wrapping it up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him, and we do something similar here. This is where we woof at something that may be a film, but it may be a TV program, maybe a charitable initiative, maybe a comic book, maybe anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week is, shocker,
TV
something visual. But no, it is not a TV program. It is a movie.
A film.
And it is a movie that, I think it's from an independent film studio. It's probably not something everybody knows about or has been expecting for a long time. I caught it last night. It was almost an empty theater. There were like 3 other people in the entire place, which is great because, again, COVID precautions and whatnot. And it is called Shang-Chi. Oh my God, this movie, it was amazing. One of my favorite Marvel movies. I don't want to gush about too much because we could probably do an entire episode on it, and we just might once everybody is back in. Beautiful. Score is amazing. If you love wuxia or kung fu films with, wire kung fu films, it's got all of that really amazing fight scenes. It's got tons of cool magical weapons. It's got that Marvel flavor that everybody loves and those great cameos. It's just fun. Plus, Simu Liu is hot. Aquafina is fantastic, and actually she's the platonic best friend, and they don't have like a major romantic subplot, but they work so well together, and it's just a wonderful pairing on screen. Yes. And of course, Michelle Yeoh and everything, she's amazing. Tony Leung is amazing in everything. And there's some interesting surprises that did not make the trailers, so hopefully nobody spoils it before you go in and see it. But I totally recommend it. See it any way you can, if you can. It'll be about 45 days before it's available on Disney Plus. So now the only way you can see it is in the movies. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Okay, thanks. I have not seen it yet. I want to ensure a more cinema safe experience, so I decided I will be going on the second weekend. I did peek at theaters, and there were just too many people in the seats for comfort over the weekend. I also have to say though that I'm not going to miss this film, of course, but we would have talked about it if we had both seen it earlier in the show, but we just haven't seen it yet. It's also nice to see really encouraging box office numbers. Yes, and I hope they're mostly from states where there are not problematic attendance. So.
Lots of COVID cases. Yeah, hopefully not.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to my Wolf of the Week. And one thing I did over the break, since we weren't going away, was I went to see a concert. And the concert I went to see was King Crimson. King Crimson was originally known as a progressive rock act. Their first album came out in 1969. They've taken many hiatuses through that time, but there is a continual through line with the leader of the group, Robert Fripp, always being part of the mix there. He's a very inventive guitarist. It's also nice to see that he has this new notoriety given the videos that he and his wife Toya put out during the pandemic, covering songs in their kitchen. If you haven't seen those, you should.
Oh,
there you go.
That's who that is.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. There you go. Oh, now you're a little more interested. But they have a very varied body of work, progressive. You know, they certainly were contemporaries of groups like Yes and Genesis early on. The albums that I gravitate towards, though, there was a series of 3 albums between 1981 and 1984, Red, Beat, and Three of a Different Pair, where they wholeheartedly embraced the new wave. And, you know, particularly in the sense coming out of bassist Tony Levin, and this is when Adrian Belew, who's an amazing guitarist himself, certainly the best guitarist I've ever seen live on stage, Adrian Belew, was also the vocalist. So songs that they have from that time, like Red and Sleepless, it's just great songs. What I have here is a box set that they sell on every tour since 2014. They have their own box set dedicated to the tour. It's called the Elements series. So I picked up the Elements 2021. They're mostly outtakes and live tracks, you know, kind of hodgepodge odds and ends, you know, really for like hardcore fans. You know, I wouldn't necessarily characterize myself, but in terms of having a souvenir, a tour souvenir, I think this is pretty cool. And if you want to try to find an encapsulation, there is an album I think that came out in '93 called Starless, the concise King Crimson, which is they have a ton of compilations, but this one is a 1-disc distillation of the group, and that might be the best one for people to check out. This has widely been promoted as their farewell tour in the United States. So this, if you can catch on some of the remaining dates, that probably will be your only chance. But that doesn't mean you can't sample the music. And it's there on Spotify and other series and other resources. So check that out. King Crimson, that is my Wolf of the Week.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this one up. And when we do so for the final bits, we do a pitch. And again, I'm going to pitch here for the YouTube channel. If you've been watching the live stream that we've been doing, these are all archived on our YouTube channel. Please go over to there and leave a comment and, like us. And we really want to, subscribe. I couldn't think of, Jesus Christ. I couldn't think of that word.
Bell.
Oh, yeah. So you can tell it's late, folks. So please do that because we naturally want to increase our profile on that platform. It annoys me that there's a lot of crap on YouTube that gets like 117,000 views, and I don't get. But I'm not going to resort. But at the same token, I will never ever resort to just embedding words just so that we be caught. I'd never do that. I don't think you would either. Never do that.
Just hashtag ASMR. It'll definitely be at the top of every stream. People be falling asleep to us every night.
Can we do try to figure out like a like words that like a what's the word Oh, forget it. Let's just wrap this up. Again, we're the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. And if you want to listen to us, please do so by subscribing to us on iTunes, listening to us through Stitcher Radio, or catching us through many of the other podcatching platforms. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof.